Alright, now I'm going to talk about No Time to Die. It's the newest Bond film with the last one with Daniel Craig. Actually, I don't think I'm going to talk about the plot. Mostly because a lot of it was really cliche now I'm thinking about it. It was just like very typical Bond films, I think, in a lot of ways. It starts with him being retired, except he's like married and has a kid, but then somebody's trying to kill him because somebody's always trying to kill James Bond. And then even though he's like married or something, he's like flirting with this one girl, but then she like turns out to be the new 007. So I guess that's okay or something, but you know, I mean, it's James Bond, you can't expect him not to be misogynistic. And like I said, it was just really cliche, and I felt like they were trying to not be cliche, not to do the Bond thing, or like kind of like have these twists and turns, but they weren't real twists and turns, you know? Like, Blofeld's in it, but he's not the villain, and then he dies, and Spectre's in it, but they're not the villain, and then they all die, and it's just like all this stuff that's just like, what? And then they find that who the real villain is, but just like every James Bond villain, he's trying to destroy the world because of course he is. And I feel like maybe it was trying to do something that was like, we're like teasing that we're gonna be just a normal Bond film, but actually we're not, but then actually we are. So all that teasing meant nothing. Another thing was that this movie really had no right to be 2 hours and 45 minutes long. It was just really bogged down with exposition, and it really didn't have to be because the exposition wasn't even important most of the time. It was just like over-explaining what Bond had to do next most of the time, or over-explaining like some convoluted device or something that might blow up the world or whatever, or like some scientific thing. And that's the other thing, is like, despite having all this exposition, none of it is character developing. In fact, I would say there's almost no character development at all in this film. Was there any? No. No, I would say there was none. There was absolutely no character development at all. Especially for an hour that's 2 hours and 45 minutes, it just felt like we were just waiting to get to the next action sequence for each thing. And to be fair, the action sequences are very cool and well done, but you could have cut everything down by a lot. You could have cut this down to an hour and a half movie, I think, and it would have been fine. It would have been a better movie, actually, because of it. Especially without character development. And just like, it was just a series, it was just a movie of action sequences and exposition. And the exposition wasn't any good. And the villain wasn't that good, and I wouldn't even say Bond was even that good in it. And I like James Bond movies, but I realize that he doesn't really change. He's always the same person, pretty much. It's always just kind of seemed like, wow, what's the thing that's threatening the world this time, and how's James Bond gonna fix it? That's kind of to all these films' detriment in a way, because they've just been going on for so long. They probably should have died after the Pierce Brosnan era, truthfully. I mean, we can make another super spy, right? One that has character development or can change throughout the movies that he's in or something, but I don't think we ever planned that far ahead. Anyway, let me just give this a rating, because otherwise I'm just going to sit here and complain about every little nitpicky thing. And I think I've basically said all of it. Well, even though the story was lacking, I would say the action was really good. And it was really entertaining and interesting while the action was happening. It was kind of like Raya and the Last Dragon, just that the action was much more interesting than the rest of the movie. But Raya and the Last Dragon was never boring, and this movie was incredibly boring during, like, anytime there wasn't action, it was just incredibly boring for the most part. It didn't help that there wasn't, like, any character arcs or anything like that. It was mostly just, like I said, just really cliche for a James Bond movie of just having, like, here's the villain, here's what he's doing to blow up the world, better fix it, James Bond. So I would say it was pretty lacking in everything but the action sequences. And action without a good plot behind it is just fluff then. It's just filler, basically. Just more filler. This is an entire movie of filler, basically. I still enjoyed it, I would say. I still enjoyed the action, at least. And truthfully, my biggest problem, I think, was just how long it was. And especially with how many scenes that could have just been, like, cut down. Like, there was one scene I remember where it was just this really long scene. It's like a 10-minute scene or something that I just felt like it could have been 30 seconds. Bond comes in, they're pointing guns at him, and the bad guy has his daughter, and he's like, I'm going to kill your daughter, and they're like, I'll do whatever you want. And he's like, I know you will, and now let me explain what I want you to do for 10 minutes. And it just felt like he could have come in, seeing his daughter being manhandled and been like, I'll do whatever you want. Okay, this is what I want you to do. It's over. Instead of having this really long, slow scene that doesn't go anywhere, it could have happened in 30 seconds. It's kind of a hard one to rate because I would say my enjoyment factor in this one was maybe like a 7, 7.5. My critical eye, I think, can't. It feels like it's not any more than like a 3. Part of me that knows that this was just a really forgettable movie without much to hold it up. There's hardly a story. It was way too long. None of the characters were that memorable, not even James Bond. Like, if this was your first James Bond movie, I'd probably just be like, yeah, nah, I don't need to watch any more of those. I'll give it a 5, because that's in between the two. If I can think of any reason to raise it or lower it. No, I think I'll just give it a 5. Felt kind of mediocre by the end of it, but even though I enjoyed the action quite a bit, and there was some fun stuff in it, it was still so lacking in story. It just drags the whole movie down, and like by the end, I mean, by next week I probably won't remember this movie at all, pretty much. There's way better James Bond movies too. That's the other thing. And that's the other thing that's kind of tragic about when James Bond movies are bad, just because there's so many other movies to compare it to. There's the 25th film in the series, you know, like you could just point at the first 5 movies with Sean Connery and just be like, yeah, why are you even making movies like this when you have these movies, you know? Yeah, I'll just leave it there. 5 out of 10. Pretty average. Especially for a James Bond movie. Great action. Really had a high budget with the action. The story was just so lacking. I'll stop repeating myself and just end it there. Please like and subscribe. Suggest movies and whatnot for me to review. That's it. Goodbye.